Designers hold the power. We just haven't realized it yet. Hi creatives, today we're going to talk about how you can use design for good. What if you could help get more resources to low-income communities, to help forests from getting cut down, or help someone improve their mental health? It might seem really unrelated to design work, but how we design websites, what we say in our marketing, and how we ultimately use design to convince people and support brands is going to impact the choices that people make and the brands that they choose to support. If you've ever seen the show Mad Men, you might have noticed that a lot of those really big ad accounts were cigarette brands. And that's how it used to be. They used to have tons of money and resources, and the really big agencies took on the work. This meant that they were able to convince a lot more people to take up smoking, and they were able to sweep a lot of the health concerns under the rug. Once the cigarette brands were taken to court for their misinformation, a lot of the big agencies who were doing their marketing actually realized it was bad for their brand to be associated with the cigarette brands. And as they stepped away, the marketing campaigns for the cigarette brands started to become lower and lower quality, and they were able to convince people much less effectively to actually take up smoking. This is the power that we as creatives have. Where we choose to use our design skills is going to impact how people make choices. It can impact our wallets, yes, but it can also impact how we see the world, how we see ourselves, and how compassionate we are to other people who are different from us. Now, the same thing that was happening with the cigarette brands is actually happening with climate at the moment. A lot of the big oil companies are being taken to court for greenwashing, and along with them, a lot of the bigger ad agencies who have worked with them are both being outed in social media and their brands are getting run down, but also some of them are being taken to court for working with these big companies knowing they were participating in greenwashing. We have movements like Clean Creatives and Creatives for Climate who are creating a movement and are changing what it means to be an ethical designer. It's no longer just about being cutthroat and competitive, it's about being collaborative and working with brands that actually have a positive impact. Today, I really don't want this to feel like it's something scary or risky or you get worried to take on work. I want this to be empowering and show you how much impact you can actually have with your creative work. So I thought I would mention what I do to be a more ethical designer, and I hope that these can spark some ideas for you so that you can find what that means to you. The first thing that I think you might have already thought about, which is really be picky about who you choose to work with. Now, this can mean having a few industries that you just don't work with. Like, I don't work with any of the oil and gas companies, and I also don't work with things like gambling or multi-level marketing, for example, where I see something being unethical for the environment or for the people being involved. Whatever that means to you, that is completely up to who you are as a person and what values you think are important. And I think it can be really good when you're picking companies that you want to work with to look for the types of things that you both have expertise in and the things that you're really passionate about. So for me, it might mean that I'm really excited about vegan food brands or let's say beauty products that are using a very ethical mindset and are serving minority communities. But for you, it might mean something really different. So find out what that means to you and find that and make that your niche. Once someone reaches out, do a little bit of digging. Companies that have a long history of being unethical, either to people or the environment or both, they tend to have some dirt once you start using Google or going to forums. You don't have to be a financial expert or look at everything. Just try to look for something that could be a warning flag. Look for red flags in what people are saying and how they're talking about this company. The same way that you would do it to see if they would pay you. Are there any previous accounts of creatives not getting paid, for example? The next one is a little bit more tricky, and I want to tell you about a time that this happened to me. And that is to push back when your client wants you to do something that you think is not very ethical. So let's say that the client seems great, you start working with them, and then they ask you to make a choice that you just don't feel comfortable with. One example was we designed the whole brand for this company that we felt was really great. They were really based in science, but then they asked us to make health claims in some of the assets that we were designing for them that just felt way overstating and wasn't very rooted in actual backed up science. And so this was something where I pushed back and I said, I understand that you want to make this claim. What evidence do you have for this claim? In this case, they talked me through what they had and what they wanted to get through, and we were able to word it in a way where it was really clear and not misleading at all. These things, of course, can feel a little bit scary if you're new to designing and you're not that used to working with clients, But I think this is where our expertise comes in. It doesn't look good for these brands if they are putting things out there that are misleading or that could be something that is even greenwashing. So what we want to make sure here is we're just saying this is something that is good for your brand. We don't want people to think that you're being misleading. I think this would be a better way to say it, or a better photograph to use, or whatever the situation is where you think you can advise on a better solution. Ultimately, you're collaborating with your client and you're making positive suggestions. Even if your client hasn't brought anything up, or if there's not a specific situation that you think is misleading, you can always be ethical in your designing choices regardless. So when you're preparing messaging or when you're preparing the design for a website, make it inclusive, make it accessible for people with different disabilities or people with different visual impairments, for example. When we're designing anything, we want to avoid hostile design. And I think this is such an interesting topic. I'd love to do a video just on hostile design, but basically it's things like designing things in ways where we misunderstand the design so that we click and accidentally buy something, or something else happens where it's just not a good fit. So what we're trying to do here is just trying to be transparent about everything, using messaging, using photography, and using choices that are accessible and inclusive to people of all abilities and all ages and differences in that way. This next one is super duper good, but people rarely do it, and that is to ask the people you are designing for if you're unsure. If someone has asked you to design a campaign for people who are deaf, but they haven't asked anyone if the messaging feels appropriate or inclusive or empowering to them, then maybe ask someone that you feel would be a trusted source on this. You can also look over your own business. So if you're collaborating with other creatives, are you treating them nicely? Are you giving them enough time for projects? Are you paying them enough? How does it work with conversations? Is it friendly? Is it positive? All these things can impact how you work and how you're being perceived as well. You can also look at your own carbon footprint. So look at, let's say, your digital footprint, like your website and how you store files, and is there a way to optimize that? Are you having way too many different cool animations on your website? Or actually you can streamline that and make it a lot faster to load and have a much smaller digital footprint. You can do the same thing with physical assets if you have business cards or if you have facilities where you need electricity. All these things pile up together. You can also see if there's anything in your local community where you can donate your time, donate your skills, or donate money even if you like. We have a policy in our company where we donate 1% of our whole turnover to a charity that we believe in every year. You should feel out what it means to be an ethical designer, and I hope that this video has helped you feel more empowered and excited about having an impact that you feel really proud of. If you want more videos on sustainability, I'm actually an ecologist before I became a sustainable designer. So I'd love to talk about things like sustainable print more in detail, or basically anything like hostile design that you think would be interesting as well. If you want to learn more about effective messaging, I have a really nice video on the principle of hand, head, and heart to write compelling copy that people really feel excited about and that works for your brands. Thank you so much for watching. Good luck with your projects and see you next time.